Do you believe love can transcend time? In today's story, you'll be taken on an emotional journey of connections and separations, where the past and present intertwine, secrets are uncovered, and promises are tested to the limit. Get ready for a tale that will touch your heart and make you reflect on the power of love and the impact of the choices we make. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and the whispers of a summer that seemed endless. Sophia, with her worn backpack and curious eyes, wandered through the local art fair, admiring the paintings and sculptures that lined the boardwalk of the small coastal town. A professional art restorer, she searched for inspiration in every detail, though that afternoon, an inexplicable emptiness weighed on her. Something was about to change, though she didn't know it yet. A few steps away, Raphael studied the colonial facades of the town with the attentive gaze of someone who saw the world as an unfinished project. An architect by trade, he found beauty in imperfections. At that moment, he focused on how the golden sunset lit up the weathered rooftops. His eyes accidentally met Sophia's, and though brief, the moment carried something neither of them could ignore. Destiny seemed determined to bring them together. As Sophia lingered in front of a painting of a couple dancing in the rain, Raphael, almost instinctively, moved closer. He was intrigued by the woman who seemed so connected to the world around her, yet so distant at the same time. His steps brought him closer, and when Sophia looked up, she felt as though she had seen him before. It was a simple moment but laden with meaning, as if something greater was pulling them toward each other. That evening, they walked along the beach together. Raphael shared stories about his passion for architecture and his goal of blending modern and traditional designs. Sophia talked about the meticulous work of restoring life to forgotten pieces. It felt as though their souls were speaking, while the sound of the waves filled the silence between their words. A bond began to form, an invisible thread connecting them across time. Passing by an old bookstore, Sophia felt compelled to go inside, drawn by its nostalgic aura. Among the dusty shelves, she found a leather-bound journal that seemed to call out to her. Opening it, she discovered love letters written in elegant script. The names signed at the bottom, Elisa and Michael, meant nothing to her, but the words overflowed with an intensity that felt oddly familiar. Raphael suggested they buy it, and Sophia agreed, sensing the journal held something important. By the time they left the bookstore, the moon was already illuminating the sky. They both felt the day marked the start of something special. Sophia clutched the journal like a treasure, while Raphael admired her silently. Neither of them could imagine how profoundly their lives were about to change. As the wind swept around them, blending sand and mystery, Sophia and Raphael walked together, their stories seemingly being rewritten in real time. The journal vibrated in her hands, promising answers to questions she hadn't even thought to ask yet. The night ended, but the first chapter of their journey together was just beginning. The next morning, Sophia woke up with the journal resting on the bedside table. The soft sunlight filtering through the curtains seemed to beckon her to dive into its pages. The words of Elisa and Michael, the couple from the past, seemed almost alive. They spoke of secret meetings, forbidden passion, and a promise they swore to keep no matter the cost. Sophia felt drawn to the intensity of their lost love, as if the letters were meant for her. Meanwhile, Raphael strolled through the town's central plaza, lost in thoughts about the previous day's encounter. Something about Sophia had sparked a desire in him, not just to know who she was, but to understand what their connection meant. He decided to find her later, using the journal as an excuse. Deep down, he knew he just wanted to be near her. When Raphael found her, She was sitting under the shade of a tree, the journal open on her lap. She greeted him with a shy smile, as if she'd been expecting him. Raphael asked about the letters, curious about why they seemed so important to her. Sophia explained that she felt an inexplicable connection to Elisa's words, as if the emotions of the couple mirrored something dormant within her. Together, they decided to uncover the story behind the letters. Page by page, they discovered that Elisa and Michael had been lovers torn apart by circumstances beyond their control. Elisa faced an arranged marriage, while Michael left for a job in distant lands. Despite the odds, they exchanged promises to reunite one day, believing their love could outlast time and distance. Inspired by Elisa and Michael's devotion, Sophia and Raphael made a promise of their own. They vowed to let nothing interfere with what they were beginning to build together. Sitting by the sea, they swore to always fight for their connection, no matter what challenges lay ahead. The weight of that moment felt etched into the wind, as if nature itself was their witness. Over the following days, Sophia and Raphael spent more and more time together. They explored the town, shared childhood memories, and laughed at small coincidences that made them believe the universe had brought them together. Yet amidst their happiness, the journal continued to reveal darker parts of Elisa and Michael's story, as if warning them that not all love survives the trials of fate. As the sun set that evening, Raphael held Sophia's hand as they walked along the beach. They knew what they had was special, but they also felt the weight of the letters as a constant reminder. Love, no matter how strong, can be fragile if not protected. Even so, they vowed to keep their flame alive, unaware of the challenges that would soon test them in ways they could not predict. Life has a curious way of testing promises made in moments of happiness. For Sophia and Raphael, that test came unexpectedly and mercilessly. Just weeks after their vow by the seaside, Raphael received an offer for a prestigious position at an architecture firm in Spain. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, something he had dreamed of for years. But accepting it meant leaving Sophia and everything they had begun building behind. He hesitated, but knew the decision couldn't be postponed. Sophia, meanwhile, was fighting a silent battle of her own. Her mother, living in another city, had been diagnosed with a chronic illness and required constant care. Torn between her responsibility to her mother and her desire to stay by Raphael's side, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. When Raphael shared the news of his job offer, Sophia forced a smile and encouraged him to accept it, though her heart ached at the thought. On their last evening together, they walked the same beach where they had promised never to part. The words of Elisa and Michael, captured in the journal, lingered in Sophia's mind like an omen. They too had been separated by forces beyond their control, and Sophia couldn't ignore the parallels between their stories. Still, she and Raphael reaffirmed their promise to stay connected and fight for their love, no matter the distance. In the weeks following Raphael's departure, their letters and messages were filled with words of hope and longing. Sophia threw herself into work and caring for her mother, masking her pain. Raphael, on the other hand, immersed himself in his new job, but felt Sophia's absence like a shadow over his achievements. Their letters were the lifeline that kept them connected, yet fate seemed to conspire against them. Some of Raphael's letters never reached Sophia, and she began to feel as though he was pulling away. Meanwhile, Raphael noticed gaps in Sophia's responses and started to wonder if her feelings had changed. Doubt, like a seed planted in the fertile soil of distance, began to grow. Both felt the weight of the silence between them, though neither understood what was truly happening. Seeking solace, Sophia turned to the journal, In its pages, she discovered that Elisa and Michael had faced similar struggles: lost letters, misunderstandings, and the emotional toll of distance had eroded their bond. It was impossible not to draw parallels with her own situation. What had once felt like a magical connection to the past now seemed like a warning of how love could slip away. The emotional separation became inevitable. When their communication finally ceased altogether, both Sophia and Raphael felt abandoned. Sophia began to question whether love was enough to overcome time and distance. Raphael, in turn, doubted whether he had made the right choice in leaving. The silence between them grew deafening, marking the beginning of a void neither of them knew how to fill. Like Elisa and Michael, they stood on the edge of an abyss that threatened to swallow everything they had built. Time, relentless as always, continued its march forward. Months turned into years, and the connection between Sophia and Raphael faded into a distant memory, like a dream dissolving at dawn. Sophia remained in the coastal town, dedicating herself to restoring historic churches. The void Raphael had left behind was like an invisible crack, present in everything she did but camouflaged by routine and habit. Raphael, on the other hand, flourished in his career. He became a renowned architect, celebrated for designs that harmonized modernity with tradition. He traveled constantly, surrounded by people, but something essential was missing. In quiet moments, usually late at night when everything else was still, he thought of Sophia. The image of her, sitting with the journal on her lap, lingered in his mind like an echo from the past. During her solitary hours, Sophia often revisited the journal of Elisa and Michael. By now, she practically knew its contents by heart, yet it still held mysteries. The remaining letters described how Michael had left in search of a better life, while Elisa was trapped in an unhappy marriage. The parallels with her own life were undeniable. Sophia began to believe the journal was more than a coincidence. It felt as though she was living the same story, destined to repeat the mistakes of the past. Despite her pain, Sophia carried on. Her mother, now in recovery, urged her to seek new opportunities, but Sophia hesitated. Her steps remained tethered to the sands of her hometown, and her heart, though fractured, was not ready for a fresh start. She kept her memories of Raphael tucked away in a sacred corner of her soul, untouchable by anyone else. Meanwhile, during a visit to a museum in Florence, Raphael stopped in front of a painting depicting two lovers separated by a storm. Something in its composition reminded him of Sophia, and for the first time in years, he considered looking for her. Yet the fear of what he might find, or not find, held him back. He knew time could erase more than just memories. It could also change people. One day, as Sophia worked on restoring an old chapel, she found a photograph hidden behind one of the frames. It was a portrait of Elisa and Michael. They looked so young and in love, but what caught her attention was the inscription on the back. "For those who believe love can transcend all." Sophia shivered. It felt as though the couple was sending her a message, urging her not to give up on something that seemed lost. As the years passed, both Sophia and Raphael found themselves at a crossroads. What they had built individually was solid, but what they had lost together was immeasurable. They lived with a longing they couldn't name, but which shaped every decision they made. The journal, their memories, and the emotions they shared continued to haunt them, as though the universe was waiting for the right moment to bring them together once more. A decade had passed since Sophia and Raphael's separation, but time hadn't been enough to erase the imprint they left on each other. In Florence, at an art exhibition celebrating historical restorations, fate decided to intervene. Sophia, invited as a guest speaker, arrived with Elisa and Michael's journal in hand, ready to share the fascinating story it contained and how it had inspired her work. She had no idea whose path she was about to cross. Raphael, meanwhile, was at the exhibition for work. He had been hired to design a new wing for the museum hosting the event. As he walked through the main hall, something caught his attention: the sound of Sophia's voice, echoing over the microphone as she explained the nuances of restoring a fresco. He froze, his heart pounding. It was her. The sight of her brought back a flood of memories he had tried to suppress. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. After her talk, Sophia wandered through the gallery, admiring the exhibited works, when she felt someone watching her. Turning around, her eyes met Raphael's. She froze, as if time itself had paused. There were no words, but the unspoken emotions in their shared gaze filled the space. Raphael approached her, and the silence between them said more than any conversation ever could. Summoning courage he didn't know he had, Raphael asked Sophia if they could talk. Still processing the shock of seeing him, she agreed. They walked to a quieter corner, where Raphael admitted he thought about her every day, but had been too afraid to reach out. Tears filled Sophia's eyes as she confessed she had felt the same, but believed he had moved on and forgotten her. Determined to understand what had happened, they began to share stories about the years they had spent apart. It was then that the pieces started to fall into place. Raphael spoke of the letters he thought Sophia had stopped sending, while she explained that she had never stopped writing. They realized something, or someone, had interfered with their communication. The discovery left them both outraged and heartbroken, but it also reignited the bond they thought they had lost. Motivated by the journal, Sophia shared with Raphael what she had learned about Elisa and Michael, including the lost letters and misunderstandings that tore them apart. The parallels between the two stories were impossible to ignore. It was as if the couple from the past had been a mirror of their own lives, with destiny repeating the same patterns generation after generation. With renewed determination, Raphael and Sophia resolved to recover the time they had lost. Their first step was to uncover who had meddled with their letters and why, but more importantly, they promised not to let fate, or anyone else, dictate the course of their story. This time, they vowed to take control and rewrite their narrative together. Sophia and Raphael knew they needed to uncover the truth behind the missing letters. They began digging into memories and belongings they had kept from their time apart. Sophia revisited the letters she had received, comparing them to those Raphael mentioned, noticing unexplained gaps. Raphael, too, reviewed his own correspondence, finding inconsistencies that couldn't be coincidental. As they pieced together the puzzle, Raphael remembered an old colleague, Charles, who had helped him with mail during his first months abroad. At the time, Raphael hadn't suspected anything unusual, but with hindsight, Charles's behavior seemed suspicious. While Raphael planned to confront him, Sophia turned to the journal, hoping it might offer further clues. Sophia found a critical piece of information in one of Elisa's final letters. It mentioned a close friend of Michael's who had harbored jealousy toward their relationship and intercepted their letters out of spite. The revelation made Sophia's hands tremble. History seemed to be repeating itself. She shared her findings with Raphael, who now felt even more certain about Charles's role. In a casual meeting, Raphael confronted Charles, mentioning the missing letters and watching his reaction closely. Charles, visibly uncomfortable, eventually confessed. He admitted to intercepting some of Raphael's letters early on, believing that a long-distance relationship would only distract him from his career. Though his reasoning was absurd, it confirmed his involvement and the damage it had caused. Meanwhile, Sophia continued to uncover more about Elisa and Michael. Despite the sabotage, Michael had tried to reunite with Elisa, only to be tragically prevented by a fatal accident. Elisa's anguish, recorded in her final letters, was heartbreaking. Sophia felt a profound weight as she realized how close her own story had come to mirroring their tragedy. Charles's confession brought a mix of relief and anger. Raphael was devastated by how much his destiny had been shaped by someone else's interference. But both he and Sophia knew they couldn't let the past dictate their future. It was time to move forward, but not without honoring the lessons they had learned from Elisa and Michael. Together, they decided to visit the chapel mentioned in the journal, Elisa and Michael's final meeting place. The visit would be a symbolic gesture to close the chapter of the past, while reaffirming their commitment to one another. Though the truth had been uncovered, they sensed that the journey was far from over. As they prepared to leave, they felt the weight of history and the pull of something greater than themselves, urging them toward the next chapter of their story. The sun was high in the sky when Sophia and Raphael arrived at the small mountain village where the old chapel mentioned in the journal was located. It was a secluded place, surrounded by rolling hills dotted with cypress trees, as if time itself had stopped there. The chapel, partially in ruins, exuded an almost tangible sense of mystery. As they stepped inside, they felt a strange mix of reverence and sorrow, as though entering a sacred space where forgotten memories still lingered. The chapel was where Elisa and Michael had met for the last time, as revealed in the journal's final entries. Michael had left a letter there for Elisa, promising to return for her, but he never came back. Sophia and Raphael couldn't shake the feeling that they, too, had come dangerously close to a similar fate. The chapel's walls seemed to whisper long-forgotten stories, and the past's presence felt hauntingly real. While exploring the space, Raphael noticed a loose stone near the altar. Removing it, he uncovered a hidden compartment. Inside, they found an aged letter written by Michael. Sophia read it aloud, her hands trembling. In it, Michael detailed the sabotage by a supposed friend, the same person who had intercepted his letters to Elisa. He also described his desperate efforts to reach the chapel, though he sensed something terrible would prevent him. The letter added a layer of urgency and unease to Sophia and Raphael's journey. It felt as though the forces that had separated Elisa and Michael were still at work. Their suspicions were confirmed when, upon leaving the chapel, they realized they were being watched. A stern-looking man, standing at a distance, seemed intent on observing both them and the chapel. Before Raphael could approach him, the man disappeared into the trees. That evening, staying at a nearby inn, an unsettling event occurred. The journal, which Sophia had placed on the bedside table, was missing. The open window suggested that someone had entered the room to steal it. Fear gripped them both, for the journal was more than a historical artifact. It was the link that had brought them together. Losing it felt like losing a piece of themselves. Determined to retrieve it, Sophia and Raphael began questioning the locals about the chapel and the history of Elisa and Michael. They learned that the chapel carried a dark reputation, considered cursed due to the tragedies that had occurred there. One story mentioned a descendant of the man who had sabotaged Elisa and Michael, someone who allegedly still harbored resentment and believed the chapel was part of his inheritance. The next day, as they delved deeper into their investigation, they received an anonymous threat demanding they abandon their search. Despite the danger, Sophia and Raphael refused to repeat the fate of Elisa and Michael. They understood they were being tested, not just by time and circumstance, but by forces intent on keeping the cycle of separation alive. What had begun as a quest to uncover the past now became a fight for their own love and their chance to rewrite history. The weight of the threats did not deter Sophia and Raphael from their mission. On the contrary, the risks they faced only heightened their determination to honor Elisa and Michael's love while safeguarding their own. Resolute in recovering the journal, they returned to the chapel, believing the answers they sought lay within its walls. That morning, a strong wind swept through the hills, as if nature itself anticipated the unfolding events. Searching the chapel once more, Raphael discovered a faint engraving on one of the stone columns, partially hidden beneath moss. The symbol resembled a family crest, one Sophia recognized from Elisa's letters. It was the emblem of a powerful family from the time, whose influence extended across the village. This confirmed their suspicions. The man who had sabotaged Elisa and Michael left a legacy that spanned generations. Perhaps the man observing them was part of that lineage, still clinging to unresolved bitterness. Just as they uncovered this clue, footsteps echoed through the chapel. The man who had been following them appeared, now standing closer. He introduced himself as Henry, a descendant of the family whose crest they had just uncovered. His demeanor was a mix of disdain and frustration. Henry revealed that he knew of the journal's existence and believed it contained secrets that could tarnish his family's name. He admitted to stealing it, determined to prevent its story from being told. Summoning courage, Sophia confronted Henry. She explained that the journal wasn't about exposing or shaming anyone, but about love. A story of redemption, not revenge. Henry hesitated, his expression softening for a brief moment, though his bitterness seemed to prevail. He refused to return the journal and left the chapel with a resolute determination to keep the past buried. Without the journal, Sophia and Raphael needed another way to preserve Elisa and Michael's legacy while protecting their own love. Sophia remembered the letter they had found in the chapel's hidden compartment. They decided to present it at an upcoming exhibition dedicated to the chapel's restoration. Sharing the couple's story, even without the journal, felt like the only way to release those memories from the shadows. On the night of the exhibition, the restored chapel glowed with candlelight, drawing curious locals eager to hear the tale of Elisa and Michael. Sophia presented Michael's letter, weaving their story into the context of the chapel's history. To her, the chapel was more than a historic site. It was a symbol of resilience against time and adversity. As she spoke, Raphael felt a profound sense of gratitude for the woman who had become his anchor. Unexpectedly, Henry arrived at the event. He seemed torn between anger and curiosity. After listening to Sophia's presentation, something shifted in his demeanor. At the end of the evening, he approached Sophia and Raphael, and without saying a word, handed them the journal. It was as though the love of Elisa and Michael had finally reached his heart. For the first time, Sophia and Raphael felt the cycle had been broken, and the past reconciled with the present. The return of the journal brought indescribable relief to Sophia and Raphael. It was more than just a historical artifact. It was the final piece of the puzzle that closed the circle. Holding it in her hands, Sophia felt that Elisa and Michael's story, so intricately tied to their own, had finally reached its conclusion. But there was still one thing left to do. A ceremony to symbolize not only the redemption of the past, but also their commitment to the future. The following week, Sophia and Raphael organized a small event at the restored chapel. This time, there was no audience, no pressure, just the two of them and the weight of the memories the chapel carried. As the golden hues of the setting sun filled the space, Raphael knelt before Sophia, holding the journal as if it were a sacred artifact. He promised that from that day forward, nothing would ever separate them again. With tears in her eyes, Sophia responded with the same promise, quoting Elisa's words from one of her letters, "True love transcends time." During the ceremony, something extraordinary happened. A soft breeze swept through the chapel, carrying the faint sound of bells, though there were none nearby. The flickering candles on the altar danced as if in rhythm with the unseen. Both Sophia and Raphael felt a presence, as though Elisa and Michael were there, witnessing the moment. Raphael squeezed Sophia's hand, and they both smiled, sensing the past had finally been set free. After the ceremony, Raphael proposed an idea that surprised Sophia. He wanted to publish the journal, not as a tale of tragedy, but as a testament to the enduring power of love. He believed the world needed to hear Elisa and Michael's story, a reminder that love, even against insurmountable odds, could endure. Sophia agreed, feeling that sharing the story was the greatest tribute they could give to the couple who had inspired them. In the months that followed, the publication of the journal sparked an unexpected wave of interest. Readers from all over connected deeply with Elisa and Michael's letters, and the chapel became a destination for those seeking hope and inspiration in their own lives. Sophia and Raphael continued to rebuild their lives together, now free from shadows and secrets. What once had been a source of pain had become the foundation for a stronger future. One evening, as they walked along the same beach where their journey began, Raphael reflected aloud on how connected he still felt to Elisa and Michael. It wasn't just the journal or the coincidences. It felt like they had been chosen to close a cycle left unfinished. Sophia agreed, but added that it didn't matter whether it was destiny or chance. What truly mattered was that they had chosen to fight for each other. Their story didn't end with the publication of the journal or the restoration of the chapel. Just like Elisa and Michael, Sophia and Raphael's love continued to echo through time, touching lives and inspiring hearts. What began as an inexplicable connection transformed into a legacy, a testament that true love is not just a force, but an eternity that transcends generations. And so, as the waves whispered on the shore, the cycle finally closed, leaving behind only peace and hope. True love, as we've seen in Sophia and Raphael's story, is never a straight path. It's a journey filled with peaks and valleys, trials and triumphs. It's an invisible thread that weaves through time, connecting souls in ways we may never fully understand. But above all, it is a choice to fight, to forgive, and to move forward, even when the odds seem insurmountable. Perhaps the greatest lesson from this story is that love doesn't belong solely to the past or the future. It exists in the now. Every moment we choose to love is a victory, over time, over doubt, and over the forces that try to pull us apart. So, what choices of love are you ready to make in your own life? If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the transformative power of love, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Here, we share stories that inspire reflection, spark emotions, and remind us of what truly matters. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What moved you the most? And share this video with someone special. Perhaps this story can inspire them too. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next heartwarming story we have in store. See you next time.